Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock. We're going to call to order the initial budget hearing for the 2025 proposed budget. We're going to kick it to Joel. He's going to give a presentation on an overview of the budget, and then we'll go into the recreation. All council members are present along with everybody from the administration. So Joel, I'll kick it to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have the presentation in front of you and it's up on the screen right now. So this is the overview of the 2025 budget. So Cassie, I don't know if there's a way. Okay, yeah, let me grab that. Okay, there we go. Here's a slide that you've seen before. Essentially, and you all know this, so what we're planning on doing is passing this budget on December 16th. If anything changes, we'll be discussing that as we go along, but these are just an overview, opening notes of what we have to do for the budget. And the income tax, the 2.25% income tax, it's ordinance number 193.1. It's broken out into percentages, but what I did was just put a caption and summarize what each portion of the income tax goes towards. Okay, so historically, we estimate our revenues low, we estimate our expenditures high, and at the end of the year, we hope that they balance out at the end. And we use our carryover balance from the prior year to help balance the following year's budget. So if you see the projection, the chart on the side, starting in 2017, is what that graph shows, and it shows what we're projecting to finish by the end of 2024. The biggest reason for that dip right there is for property purchases. So about $1.8 million worth of property purchases are factored into this. This has to do with the Jolin property at the industrial park and the Gratz property at the industrial park. So we're anticipating making that purchase by the end of the year for the Gratz property. That's $1.2 million. And that's about $550,000 for the Jolin property. So yeah, almost $2 million right there. And that's a conservative estimate for ending 2024, but that's a big reason why that dip there. Just a review of 2024 on recreation pickleball courts. Rec programming participation is still high. I don't want to steal any of Tim's thunder. We had some special events. We had the Special Olympic softball tournament, the solar eclipse event, and the Wolf Creek and Sledding Hill project were completed. In economic development, Buffalo Rock Brewing Company obviously finally opened. The town center, we just closed on the property with River Rock Development on Friday. We started the residential development. There's about 10 houses up right now. It's happening at lightning speed, faster than what we could have anticipated. We're making big strides in the industrial park. And I don't want to overlook the commercial construction and activity on Navarre Avenue. We have the Dairy Queen. We have the Sheets that's planned. They're still planning to demolish the building, the old Midwest Eye Clinic, in December, at least start that. We have some renovations that happen. Ralphie's and the Burger King were two of them that come to mind. And a smattering of other things. So there is some commercial activity that's positive. We also have some activity, some renovations at the hotels. And I just sent something out earlier today that I've been talking with the owner of the Holiday Inn and that whole complex, and they are planning to repave that parking lot. So I know I get a lot of complaints on that. I'm sure everybody else does. So that's positive. And then finally, the comprehensive plan update. That's in the works. Looking to have that completed by spring or early summer of 2025. Oregon Fire and Rescue. Again, I don't want to take away from anybody else's thunder here, but some big things happening at the fire department. The IT department we started the ticket system. We have the new servers are online, multi-factor authentication, and we have a new IT director, and he's knocking it out right now. So he's doing really well. And building and zoning, a lot of big changes here too. The property maintenance code was a real big change implementing that. And a lot of the other things I have listed up here, I started to run out of room, so I won't get into details. You all know what happened, but just as a reminder, you have that in front of you so you can reference it. But a lot of code changes happened this year. The nuisance complaints, that number is actually up from last year. And not by a lot, but enough to be a little noticeable. We do have a lot of, neighbor complaints, things like that, that we've been dealing with. The number of permits is up, and the amount of investment is up. All these statistics are up from 2023. But 2023 was a down year, but these stats that are up here right now are actually on the high end of what we've seen in the past. So that's a good sign. We're seeing more investment and more permits. Public service, and again, Paul's going to be doing his presentation. One thing I want to say about water distribution is, we've had the lead letters go out. The lead services that remain on the city side, we're addressing those. We have about an average number of main breaks. We have the backflow preventers. We got 100 to 200 left to install. We got the boring machine. We have the projects that are wrapping up. And then on the police side, we're in the hiring process now of hiring 4 officers. And then we are anticipating some retirements for next year. And we did get the COPS grant award. So that's a big deal for the fire department or the police department. I wanted to jump into some economic development items. So the National League of Cities puts out a report every year. So the 2024 report puts together a response, a survey, and they take different state of the city speeches from mayors around the country, and they kind of rate things in terms of priority. So in 2024, by far the biggest priority for mayors around the country was economic development. And in there is infrastructure and housing, your top 3, and then there's public safety, human services, and everything else. But economic development really stands out as a big topic there. I wanted to highlight that. Also in the National League of Cities reports, that the challenges that cities face attracting businesses is the number one response by far in terms of facing what economic challenges do cities have, and it's attracting businesses. And then they put together, what are the strategies that cities are using to attract businesses. So business attraction retention is number one strategy that cities are using. And then number 2, downtown revitalization efforts. I highlighted those. And then there's workforce development also. Now in our region, we're pretty strong in workforce. We have a very skilled workforce, and we're kind of known around the country for our workforce and how skilled it is. So I wanted to highlight the other 2 because how does this relate to us? Well, what are we doing about these types of challenges in economic development? We're creating a town center. We're establishing the TIF districts. We're partnering with developers, and we're setting design standards to have a product that's going to be what we want to see happen in the community. The industrial park, we're doing the land assembly right now. We've built the road using an EDA grant, and we have attracted a developer for the site. I also put in here code changes with the property maintenance code, moratoriums and spacing requirements, those code changes. It's kind of setting a standard for ourselves for what we expect and what we want to see happen in the community. So we are doing things to address some of these economic challenges. So we just got to see them through. And then another one of those issues that they pointed out in the National League of Cities was housing. And there's a lot of information here in terms of housing. So I'm going to go into sort of a macro level, and then how does it affect Oregon? So in Ohio in 2019, the average price to build a house was $317,000. And the average home sale, used home sale price was $147,000. In 2024, 5 years later, that same house, the average home sale, that home build price was $447,000. So big jump in the cost to build a house, and then a big jump in home sale prices in general from 147,000 to $212,000. If you go in that middle column, that's those percentages. 44.7% of people could afford to build a new house. In 2024, only 20.4% of people can afford to build a new house right now. In terms of just buying a house, almost 75% of people in Ohio could buy a house. Now that's dropped in 2024 to 51.8% of people can afford to buy a house. And a lot of that is inflation, but a lot of it also is demand, because if you look at that bottom column, almost 28,000 homes were listed in 2019. And I know this is in 2024, the year's not over yet, but at the time in October, only 11,700 homes were listed for sale. So your number of listings and houses has dropped dramatically as well. So those are some statistics from around the state. Where does that leave us in Oregon? Just looking at the home prices, this was put together. This was information we got from the auditor's office, 2019 through 2023. That is the average home sale price in Oregon. And that's comparatively, that's the average home sale price in Lucas County. And you can see the difference of increases, where there was a spread of about $15,000 before, has now turned into about make sure my math is right, $40,000 now. So the spread has widened greatly between the city of Oregon and all the rest of Lucas County. So home sale prices we are trending in the same track as the rest of the state of Ohio here. These are just a couple of things I wanted to point out here. This is a graphic from the information we got from our comprehensive plan. 8,200 houses, total households in Oregon. And our median household income here, $73,883 median household income. Compare that to the rest of the state of Ohio is $66,900. And then in Lucas County alone, it's $57,700. So we've got pretty good buying power here comparatively. Some other Ohio stats, 20% of Ohio's housing was built before 1939. 50% of the housing stock in Ohio is more than 50 years old. So where does that put us? About 61% of Oregon's housing is over 50 years old. And this is what this is a chart of Oregon's housing stock and when it was built. So they do in 20-year spurts. But if you look at the 2000 to 2019, we're just over 1,000 houses built, compared to almost 1,500 from 1980 to 1999. And then, of course, you see in 1940 to 1979 how many houses were built in that time period. So the biggest factor here is, what we're seeing is a decline in the number of new housing builds. And you see that from 2000 to 2009, and then from 2010 to 2019. And then you look at 2000 to now, we had 41 And now we're seeing a lot more in the, in the town center area, Eden Park, and there's some other subdivisions that are planned. But as of right now, we have a very low number of new housing starts, the lowest that we've seen in a long time. And this is just kind of give a graphical depiction of what's going around in the country. That's Austin, Texas to the far left. Then going from left to right, it's Austin, Texas, Charlotte, Nashville, Raleigh, North Carolina, and then Indianapolis, Columbus, and Cincinnati. And you see that's the housing permit data that they show, and where housing growth is happening and how it's slowed down. This is just 2023. And the comparison between Indianapolis and Columbus is that they're very similar situated states. The capital's in the center of the state. Indiana's population is about 6 million people. Ohio is about 11 million people, almost double what Indiana is. And Indianapolis is outpacing Columbus in terms of housing build. So, and as we all know, in this last census, we did lose an electoral vote with redistricting. So we did lose population. And that's there's something behind that, but it's just kind of showing the housing situation and how it pertains to us. I know some of you have seen this graphic right here, but this is a really interesting one. So just for the city of Oregon, I'm kind of switching gears here off of housing, but workforce. So 8,200 people live outside of the city and work inside of the city. 1,500 people live inside of the city and work inside of the city. And 7,900 people live inside of the city but work outside of the city. So as you see, like this is a big deal for us, obviously, because our general fund is based on income tax. So 8,200 people live outside of the city and work here are paying the full income tax. The 1,500 that live here and work here are paying the full income tax, and a portion of the 7,900 are paying a portion of the income tax. And we believe that around maybe a little less than half of that 7,900 work inside of the city of Toledo, meaning that they don't pay any income tax. But the people that work outside of the city but don't work in the city of Toledo that would pay a smaller or lesser amount in income tax still pay a portion of their income tax. If that makes sense. So they make up the difference. So if they pay 1.8% income tax in Perrysburg, then they work in Perrysburg but they live here, they're going to pay the delta between the 1.8 and 2.25%. So an income tax to the city of Oregon. So but the vast majority, and I would, just roughly estimating the about 75% of our income tax from withholdings comes from people that do not reside in the city of Oregon. So getting back to the 2025 budget, some of the factors here, we have seen a slowdown in inflation. Some sources are saying that it's at about 2.5%, maybe a little lower, depending on what source you look at, but the core prices are still high. So what that means is the big jump in inflation, those prices stuck. Now the inflation increase that we're seeing now are steady back to the quote unquote normalized inflationary rates. We're seeing a slight growth in our collection in withholdings for income tax, but it's not pacing what inflation was prior to this. So we're still seeing those core prices high, but we are seeing a slight increase in withholdings. Our health insurance premiums did go up, as everybody knows, 8.5%. That is lower than what we had expected, but is still high. What I'm seeing around our region right now is something similar. Some communities are seeing around 8 to 9% increases. So we're about, I would say, from what I'm seeing, we're about on the average of what everybody else is at. Some other things to factor in here, the ARPA funds are no longer available. We've spent all of our ARPA funds, and those went towards salaries for mainly for general fund, all of which went to general fund salaries and wages. We did have a larger number in tax refunds this year, a significantly larger number in tax refunds. We do have an account that is built up to withstand such high tax refunds, but I believe we're, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were over $5 million in overall income tax refunds this year. Is that correct?
Once the major one is paid out, yes, we will be.
Yep. So over $5 million. That might be the highest year that we've ever seen in income tax returns, or at least one of them.
I think since the early 2010, 2012-ish range. Yes, that's correct.
Net profit earnings are down. So these next few, I'm gonna pick on the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio legislature did change some of the laws. Our net profit earnings are down, and that had to do with a code change that was made at the state legislature's level. We're no longer collecting withholdings for people under the age of 18. So any seasonal workers, anything like that, and if we are collecting withholdings, we should expect to see us refunding those individuals in the following years. So that was a legislature change. And again, these are things that hit us, that impact our overall budget. So we're seeing the impact of those. Local governments are still down. The state has not increased those at all. And for those that don't know, local government funds are basically state taxes that are collected by the state and then given back to the cities, which the cities use for their general funds, namely for general fund activities. But investment earnings are still high, and that's due to interest rates still remaining high. The interest rates are coming down, but not at the pace that they were expected to come down at this time last year. They were projecting a faster rate of decline in interest rates, but they've kind of been holding and slowly ticking down. Some of the national trends that affect us. So overall, national credit card debt is the highest it's ever been. They're saying that that's because of cost of living and inflation, but also another factor is post-pandemic spending. People were used to, money was coming in still. They were used to spending money, and then they got used to it, and inflation went up, and they continued to spend money, and they racked up more credit card debt. So that's what I've been reading from what some economists are saying. Disposable income is holding, but savings are down, and that's what that chart is. What I have highlighted on that chart to the right is that the long-term average of individuals saving money was at about 8.46%. But as of last year, the average savings was about 4.8%. So people are saving less money, I guess. That's what that boils down to. The GDP growth, and depending on where you're at, which source you're looking at, is about 3%. That's actually up from the projections from this time last year, which was they were projecting at about a 1.5% GDP growth. So we're still seeing a holding steady. Some of that could be, campaign posturing. We'll have yet to see on that one. That's a hard one to predict because of what we're seeing here in the housing market, what we're seeing in disposable income, what we're seeing in savings, what we're seeing in national credit card debt. These are all not good signs for, in my opinion, for the economy. So, but our labor market is still strong. We hear that from industries, and the interest, as I said before, the interest rates are slightly down and not going down as fast as what was projected from last year. So jumping into this year's budget, here are some of the goals that we have. So to reestablish, so we have that COPS grant that we were awarded this year. We want to reestablish the K-9 unit, install the flock cameras. Those are the license plate reading cameras, which would be networked into a bigger system. We'll continue to look at and work towards staffing solutions at the fire department. That's something we talked about earlier on in 2024. We want to complete the comprehensive plan. There is a land acquisition that we were looking at doing with Walleye Power. That has been put on hold for a little while. That's due to Walleye Power. They're having some turnover over at their plant right now, and they've kind of put things on hold at the time being, but we want to work towards completing that. We want to establish a hotel motel tax too, and I know Councilman Wallensack, you've had some conversations with some people. That's something that has to happen at the state budget level. So in June, at the end of June, early July, whenever they pass the state budget, that's something that we have to follow up on. So we'll be following up on that in the first quarter of 2025 to get a hotel motel tax established here. We want to improve on the, city-sponsored events. And, I put on here a question mark next to Oregon Fest. We don't have anything in the budget right now to really support Oregon Fest. We've always, with Keith Henninger and his staff and city staff, we've been supportive of that event, but, that the future of that is uncertain at this point. In the industrial park, complete the land assemblage and what we need to do and work with the end user. Talking about the town center, we want to break more ground. We're still on pace to break ground on the commercial side in the spring. We did receive plans from the apartment complex to break ground there. And then by this year yet, we still want to establish TIF districts, which we'll be presenting next week at the council meeting, and then look for passage of those on the December 16th special council meeting with the budget. And continue to work with residential developers and constructing in existing and new subdivisions. There are a lot of plans out there right now. So we'll continue to work on that. One thing that's really bothered me over this year is the streetlight conversion project with First Energy. We did hear back from them. We've been on them obsessively, and I'll tell you that it's been really lackluster even to get a response from First Energy. But what the response we got back is they're still working on their light assessment that they're doing. So it's the computer work now. They're going around confirming how many lights they have and how many they need to change out. So we'll continue to work on that. The code changes. Steve and I continue to look at that. I'll pick out a few things and take a look at them, but he's on top of that stuff. So he sees some things in there that we need to modernize. So we'll continue to look at some of the code changes. The Navarre Avenue Improvement Project will be next year, and the Streets Building Project will be next year. These are just some of the big highlights. And then I put the Northwood Building Inspection thing on here. That's something that I'm meeting with the Kevin Laughlin with Northwood next week to go over this. We do have a draft agreement to work from. We're going to talk about that next week, and then that's something that we would want to present formally to the Economic Development Committee sometime in the future. So I have that on the list too. Just some of the other things that we have that impact the budget. We, not to forget that we did have a increase of in our refuse collection contract over the next 3 years. I believe it was 10% this coming year, and then 5% the following 2 years. So that's another cost to us, another hit to us. The material and contract service prices are still high. Prices aren't coming down. They're just not going up as fast as they were over the last 2 years. Revenue from income tax collected people that work in the city for less than 20 days. What I'm told is that there is a push to have some changes made to that. There was that was another state code change where individuals that work in a city it used to be, I believe, 12 days, and they upped that to 20 days. So people don't have to pay the income tax in the city that they work in if they work less than 20 days in that city for that year. So I think there was a push or some lobbying effort being done at the state level to change that and work that back down. The EMS billing revenue is up. A lot of that has to do with the changes to the ALS system, the countywide ALS system. We did have an increase in contract negotiations. We did hire 3 additional firefighters, full-time positions this year, later in the year. Some of the opportunities here, and I highlighted this one because it really culminates to this. And I want to jump into this a little bit. We got to get the projects under construction at the town center, and we got to get a deal done at the industrial park, and see these things through. The town center is important because right now we're carrying about $10 million worth of debt right now. That's for the road construction and the new property purchase. So, and we're not seeing the TIF revenue coming in from that right now. So once we start seeing that TIF revenue come in, we'll see that debt service start to come off out of our general fund. And not only that, but that TIF revenue can be used to pay ourselves back for what we've already spent out of the general fund for the property purchase and the road construction. So that is really important to get more construction completed at the town center site in order for us to see that and realize the TIF revenues that we'll receive from it. And in the industrial park, and you all know this, we've made significant strides, but over the years we've made a lot of investments in assembling land at the industrial park. Super important, great strategy, and that's as cities, these are the things that we need to be doing to advance industrial development, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor, and hopefully we can get over the finish line with the user that we're working with right now. As you know, we've talked with them. We've been talking with them. They were here at a council meeting just a couple of weeks ago. So those are some big investments, and we want to see the return on that investment hopefully here in the near future. Some of the opportunities we also see, so this is something that Steve Schrake and I have talked about, something we'll have to talk about in one of the committees, is that our inspection fees haven't been adjusted for a long, long time. And we have very low inspection fees. And what we're looking at is just adjusting them to modernize them to an average level that we see around our area. So, because they're really low right now, that's something we could see an improvement on. And that's something that we will plan on bringing formally before City Council at a future date. We've talked at the last meeting about the sewer and front foot assessment capital, the sewer capital improvement charge and the front foot assessment for sewer lining. There was some talk about eliminating roadside mowing as a cost savings for us. I wanted to point that out because that is something that we can look at to help us with some savings. And we do spend a lot of time in our streets department doing a lot of mowing for roadside mowing. So that could be, we could see a savings there. Now the school resource officer contract with the schools, I did look at that. That is something that we can, I know that was something that was legislated by City Council, but if that's something we want to reapproach, I think that's maybe an item that we could formally talk about during either a finance and budget committee meeting or a combined finance and budget and safety committee meeting. But right now we are definitely paying more for the SROs in the schools than what the schools are for that particular contract. So our expenses are going up and their expenses aren't on that one. So it's something to look at, and that could be a cost savings for us in the long run, but we are definitely not paying, in my opinion, what I see in other contracts around the area. We're definitely paying more to have school resource officers in the schools than what other schools are in other areas. Just my opinion, and I think that's something that we could shore up on if that's a will of council. And then another strategy could be, doing some kind of hiring freeze. I know I talked with the chief actually this morning, and we've been talking quite a bit about hiring the 4 officers. When we hire the 4 officers, we'll be at full staffing levels at the police department for the first time in probably close to a decade. 5 years, okay. So it's been 5, okay, all right. So 5 years, but it's you know, that'll be the first time, but we are anticipating some retirement. So in fact, I think we're hiring 4. We have 3 vacancies now. We're hiring 4, but 1 is set to retire in January, if I'm February, okay, February 1st, yeah, okay. So, I mean, we are anticipating some retirements, and it is gonna take some time to get these officers trained up and get on the road on their own. So, but, yeah, not that we want to do a hiring freeze at all, for any reason, but that was something that was implemented during the pandemic too, because there were some hardships during that, for the city, but, that is something, that we could do. And getting back to the, getting projects under construction, you know, a big point there is that, you know, we're carrying $10 million in debt, for the, town center. You know, what that amounts to on an annual basis is about, you know, roughly $650,000 a year, in debt service payments. So getting that off of our books and off of the general fund, paying for it for now, knowing that the TIF revenue is gonna pay it back eventually, but that's $650,000 a year that we're paying. Plus the industrial park, just for the Jolin property purchase, you know, for the next 4 years, we have slated paying $547,000 a year for that. So that's, you know, right there, that's over $1 million in just, you know, debt service payments, for those 2 items. So, seeing a return on that investment from projects getting underway is gonna be a big impact in the future to our budget. So I just wanna make sure I harp on that a lot, 'cause that's really important. So the overview, here are the numbers year by year, starting in 2019, revenues and expenditures. You know, we saw a drop in 2019. We saw a slight increase in 2020 expenditures to actuals. Expenditures, revenues, these are actuals. We saw a drop in 2021. We stayed about even in 2022. And then 2023, we saw a big increase in collections. A big reason for that was net profit earnings. That's something that, you know, and that was right before the state law changed in 2024. So we didn't see the net profit earnings as high, not even close, actually. In fact, we saw, you know, big refunds because of that. But you know, what I'm getting at here is that, you know, our revenues didn't match 2023 because of the net profit earnings. 2024 revenues that you see on there toward the bottom, that is projected. We're going to have to see where we come in at the end of the year. We still have the rest of November and then collections for December yet. So November's looking really good. Hope it holds for December, but those are just projected. We're hoping that it actually comes in higher. Same with the expenditures. That's an estimate right now. We're hoping to realize some savings here too towards the end of the year, and that comes down. But that's a lot of that expenditures that you see there, about $2 million. That is the property purchases. So, you know, when it comes down to it, we're hoping that without those property purchases, you'll see us balance out. Okay. But the big deal right now is that bottom number. So 2025, what we have budgeted for revenues, again, we try to estimate conservatively, $25.4 million budgeted for revenues, and almost $30 million budgeted for expenditures. You know, that's what we have right now. That's, you know, again, we try to, you know, we estimate conservatively. So it's a little bit higher of a spread than what we're used to. If you look at years past and, you know, you compare your revenues to actuals, you know, and I'll use 2019. Actually, 2019 wouldn't be a good one to but use 2020 as an example. I believe at the time we were not anticipating $19 million. I think we were projecting lower than that. And if you look at the budget, $22 million, and our actual expenditures were around $18 million. So that spread, was a lot different too. So back then it was probably closer to, $3 million spread, in any given year for the city of Oregon. The difference between projected or budgeted revenues and budgeted expenditures, where there's always a spread. Usually it's around, in the years past, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, was around $3 million roughly,
In general,
give or
yeah,
take.
on average, yes.
Give or take. It depends on the year and what's in the budget. This year, we're about a 4.6, $4.5 million spread. So difference. It's a little higher than what we're used to, but a lot of that, we're hoping that, with the TIF revenues and debt service that we have, we got to start, washing some of that off. And, in future years, hopefully that improves so we don't have as much debt service out of the general fund. And then we're able to pay ourselves back for the expenditures that we've had through TIF revenue. So, and also through property sales and, increased income tax collections from, existing industry and any new industries that come in, and that could be for construction as well. So, one thing I didn't add in, I did send that out earlier today. We did hear from Synovus. They are at their last community advisory board meeting. They are planning a turnaround for next year. Looks like it's going to be about a 60-day turnaround, so pretty significant turnaround for them and for us. So we all know what that does for us in those months. That'll start in the spring and then in the early summer. So some good news there. This is water and sewer. So basically what this slide is showing that, our water and sewer funds are doing well. They're balancing, estimating at the end of the year that the water fund is going to be pretty even, and slightly ahead in the sewer revenue fund. So that's what we're projecting right now. But we do have the debt service payments for the wastewater plant improvement project and some other projects that are coming online. So we did talk about those last week. Then we've got, this is just a quick snapshot. I wanted to point out that second line, the income tax fund. So that was a lot higher, and that's what we're anticipating right now ending at. So it is still healthy, but we did have the big tax refunds that we're projecting to see here at the end of the year payout. And then I wanted to go down to the second to the last line, the general obligation debt. That's general fund debt. We did add the property purchase of the town center property on there. And again, once the construction's completed out there, we'll be collecting TIF revenues to help offset that. So that is factored into that number. But this kind of goes over all of our city debt that we have right now. So, and last item on here is these are the things that as I've met with department heads and Nick has met with department heads, these are the items that were cut out of the budget. As of right now, just to highlight a couple of them, we did talk about the phone system upgrade last year. Talking with Ken, that's not something that has to happen right now, so we're going to hold off on that. We had an engineering study for the police department just to kind of give us an estimate of what it would take to renovate the building to help just improve the flow over there, because right now it's kind of a maze. If you've walked through there, it's kind of chopped up and not a lot of good utilization of space. The road program, there's $650,000 that was cut out of that. Now we could see, depending on how we end the year, that number we could factor more road funds going back into that fund. But that's something that, we got to take a look at the end of the year. So that's a recommendation that we cut that out right now and look at that at a later date. Just some of the other things. I know I put in here Rita's Soups because Quinn McDougal came in here. I wanted to make sure that that was highlighted in here because that was something that council, we said we'd take a look at as we go through the budget. So I just wanted to point that out as a talking point. Other than that, we had to think real hard about a lot of the things that we cut out of here, but in the end, this is where we landed. And if this is anything that anybody wants to take a look at and add back in, or if anybody else has any comments on these, we're open to suggestions on this. But this is where we're at, so we could get to a more balanced budget. But overall for 2025, I will say that we are looking at ending the year lower than where we're going to be at the beginning of this coming year. So, but I'm not, as a budget director, I'm not hitting the panic button yet. You have up years and you have down years. As you've seen in years past, you have up years and you have down years. We're still holding strong at, the $14 to $15 million level in our reserve balance. And, we are anticipating going below that. But, for the time being, we're going to see, we're anticipating a dip in 2025, ending the year, hopefully having our construction projects started, some completed, and we start to see that TIF revenue to offset some of our debt service. Hopefully we see the industrial park start to get off the ground. We start seeing revenue from that through the property sale. And then in the future, some of the, if we can structure a property tax agreement and an incentive agreement that would benefit us, we'll see the revenues from that as well in the long term. So those are the strategies right now we're attacking to help that. And, we just got to see it through. So that's where we're at. That's all I have for the 2025 budget overview, and I'll take any questions at this time.
No, at this time, I'm going to put that off because
Okay.
we have to get to recreation. We have 10 minutes before
Gotcha.
our council meeting starts. If we have time at the end, we'll circle back for questions, but I know rec will have a lean budget, so we should be able to get through this rather quickly, but let's get through that and then we'll circle back with questions. Thank you. Mr. Borton. Wherever you want to be, Mr. Borton.
All right, so real quickly, my constituents here said I have 7 minutes, so I'll get through this quickly. A lot of the first few slides are a lot of the overview that we either talked about at our last October rec committee meeting, or that Mr. Mazur just brought up again here in some of the highlights. Just a lot of the projects that we completed that were either budgeted in 23, the press box, the new concession stand restrooms. We completed the pickleball courts, which were budgeted in 2024. So all 3 of those items got finished this year. The Wolf Creek Restoration Project, which was a grant that Don Nelson spearheaded through Paul's department. Our special events, which again, we've talked about, the Honey Fest, the Eclipse. We do have a lot of our holiday events going on right now. Hank just picked up letters from Santa today. That the kids at the school write letters to Santa and they'll get a response back from him. So that's a program we do that may not be as publicly known as some other things we do, the tree lighting, or the indoor tree, the outdoor house decorating, as well as our city tree lighting coming up here December 7th. Tournaments, we talked about this again in the October meeting, just kind of comparing what events we brought in here in 2023 to 2024. About a $10,000 increase in field rentals. So that was good. As we looked at, we did change a little bit. We charged not only a field reservation fee, but we also charged a per team fee to the tournaments in lieu of parking, and they seemed to be okay with that. So that was an additional $10,000 for there. You can go to the next slide, Cass. This is just our current budget. So as we look here at the end of the year, essentially showing that we're in good shape. We're not over in any accounts, and if we are, we've moved funds to accommodate that. So we're within budget as far as our operating budget goes for the 2024 cycle. And Cassie, yeah, thanks. As far as fees collected, I just wanted to highlight this real quick. If you look, we have two different fee or revenue streams, I guess, or revenue lines in our budget. The first one is our fees collected, which we budgeted 240. We brought in 288,000 to date. There could be a few more coming in. And then our concession fees, and if you notice, that's about $5,000 short. The reason for that is what we discovered in September is that all of our credit card transactions go into the recreation fees account, and they don't necessarily reflect in the concession fees account. So we're over what was budgeted in both accounts. If you add those two numbers together, a lot of that is coming from the fact that as people spend more and more on credit cards, when they come to the concession stand, those fees aren't necessarily getting reflected in that account. And Mr. Rowan and I have talked about ways we might be able to remedy that for next year. So the concession fees was $95,000 roughly in cash that was collected from the concession stands this season. Just some goals for next year. We did see still a 5% increase in total participation in our programs from last year. So we want to continue to offer high quality programs as we move ahead and look forward at what we're doing for next year, offering a lot of the same things that we've offered the last several years, making sure those programs are meeting the needs of the citizens. As we talked about in October, right now we have 385 kids playing basketball, which is up from last year by about 40 or 50 kids. So overall, about a 5% increase in all of our programs that we offered in 23, and we offered those programs again in 24. We are working to offer some of our own baseball tournaments, so we think that will increase revenue as well, that will cut out the middleman essentially, and we'll run the tournaments. And we're working on some soccer side events, tournaments as well as that side. We don't use as much right now for tournaments, et cetera. So just kind of ways to look at that. Obviously, a goal for next year, maintain and keep our grounds and facilities looking great. We do get a lot of comments from people from out of town that they wish they had this in their hometown, or it's one of their favorite places to come as they travel during the summer for tournaments and events, because they just like the facility. They think it's fantastic. They like the new additions of the bathrooms and the concession stand, the pavilion. They like the splash pad that their younger kids can come and play while their older brother or sisters playing in baseball or softball games. So we do want to maintain those. And then we are still working on our staffing levels. We did use an app this year. We were able to cut about $20,000 in our overage on seasonal staffing this year, and look to get the rest of that $10,000 out this year as we look at some other things. So CIP requests, obviously, as council knows and administration, the last several years, we've had some huge CIP requests with the new buildings and the pickleball court. So this year we are pretty late, as Mr. Wallenczak stated. We're looking at a new lawnmower. We mow about 180 acres. Lawnmowers that we have about 8 zero-turns right now. The industry, usually after about 1,500 hours is when you start to see major malfunctions with that equipment. It can last longer, but there's usually some expensive maintenance that happens. Our oldest unit is really close to that 1,500 hours, so probably needs to be replaced at some point in time next year, and we'd look to trade that in or put that on gov deals. So we do have another Ferris zero-turn mower. We did buy one this year from Gladios local, so that was a good thing. Our irrigation on the baseball and soccer sides, we did kind of band-aided a lot together this year, but we do have to do some major renovations on the soccer side, especially as that system is about 10 to 15 years old. And there's some computers and things involved that are going to be a little pricey. So I don't think we're going to use all that 50,000, but we're just not sure from the estimates we're getting what it's going to take until we get someone in there and kind of really dig it all up. We've talked about the art wall at several rec meetings. That would be something in front of the complex as people were walking in. They would be able to hold murals. And I think it's like 3 4x8 sheets of plywood that would be painted by local artists. It would allow us to change those out periodically through the year. As one group paints one, it goes up for 3 or 4 months. We slide those panels out and we can put a new panel in, would say, welcome to the rec, those kind of things. And we've talked about that for a while. The security cameras for the pickleball courts, the soccer side, as we found through the years, we think we have enough coverage with cameras until we don't, until the police say, hey, there was an incident on this field, and we look and we maybe catch a glimpse in a corner. So with Assistant Chief, we've been working and talking about cameras, where we can place those, not only catching cars coming in and out of the parking lot, seeing what's going on in our parking lot, and also with the new pickleball courts, obviously, to protect that investment we made. Some Christmas decorations and a used pickup truck. Right now, in the last 2 years, we've eliminated 3 vehicles from our fleet. One of those was a 1989 GMC that we had about as much use out of it as we could, and then a lot more. You could literally see the road through the floorboard, so it did not go off site after a while. So we have eliminated 3 vehicles. We're just asking for 1 more. So when we do go off site, because we do mow at, South Shore, the boat ramp, the triangle, we mow along the bike paths. We have to take a truck and a trailer for those. Right now, we only really can send 1 trailer at a time, but we also drag the fields at the elementary schools, at South Shore Park, the baseball fields, et cetera. So it'd be nice to have a second vehicle around that we could tow and send crews in different directions. So total CIP, 148,000, which, as Mr. Wallenczak said, is lean, but that's good. And I understand with all the investment that council's made the last several years, and we appreciate that. I knew that's where this was going to be this year anyway. Any questions?
Council, is there any questions for Mr. Borton at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Ackerman, Mr. Reeves?
thank you. I see with the items that have been removed, like the pole barn and the mini split at the concession. Is that does a mini splits need to be replaced? Or is that putting a heating and air system in the old, which is a new one, or the newer one?
And
Could
the
you explain that, please?
Yes, and the soccer stand right now, so that was the original bathroom concession building. When that building was built, it did not have heat or air. So every year we do have to winterize that building. So if we were able to do that, that would help prevent having to winterize it every year, keep that building conditioned. But
So what kind of ventilation, Mr. Sheriff, if you don't mind, what kind of ventilation system do we have in the one on the soccer complex?
the soccer side has no ventilation. I mean, there's an exhaust fan that turns on, but there's no heat or air. So our staff, when they're working in the spring and the fall, they're either using fans to blow air around if it's hot, or they are cold.
Mr. Borton?
Yeah, we do have to drain the water. Yeah, I mean, when I say winterize, they literally drain the water. They took all the pipes apart. Because 2 years ago, when they re-operated, or what the best term is, when they turned it back on in the spring, unfortunately, some mistakes were made, and there were pipes frozen and burst, and all kinds of problems we had. So now they just disconnect everything.
Mr. Borton,
So
you have
Mr.
mini splits on the old concession stand. Can those could be converted over and utilize those instead of purchasing new at the time?
Yes, the plan would be, right now, there's 3 on the old concession stand. If we were able to do that, I'd probably move 2 of them over there, leaving 1 in that building to keep it conditioned. And we do have a new unit that was never installed that we would put over on the soccer side as well.
Thank you. Mr. Reeves, is there anything else?
I just want to make sure that we are taking care of the big investment that we have put into both of our concession, restroom concession stands. I just want to make, like I said, if a pipe burst over there, that's not a cheap project compared to 25,000, just to make sure that we have that covered. So I'm in favor of of putting that in the budget, and we don't use it because of the older ones that we have, or the new one that hasn't been put up. I think that would they wouldn't have to come back to us again for that. So that's my suggestion with the mini splits. And the other thing I had, and I'm not sure if that falls under this department, but the roof replacement, the cemetery. I mean, that system's only going to get worse if we don't take care of that now. It's going to get more expensive. Like I said, I don't know what department that falls under, but something like that should should be taken care of because as everyone knows, when you go to buy have your roof replaced, the project just keeps getting more expensive and more expensive. So those are two of my things that I see, that the items that were removed, I think like I said, the mini split thing should be in there if we don't use it and because of what we have, but if we need to, they're gonna have to come back to us for it. And the roof replacement at the cemetery, if somebody could, maybe from the administration, address that. I just know how much things, just keep going up. And we just talked about how all of our, budgetary items have gone up, you know, the increase. So I'd rather have it in there and not use it than to not have it in there and then have to come back to us for it.
Thank you,
So-
Mr. Reeves.
So if we could get somebody from the administration to talk about the two things, please.
Quickly, because Ms. Ackerman has a question also. Mr. Mazur?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Reeves, I mean, these were items that we talked to the department heads about that we felt that we could cut for this year. And we're in a really lean budget, and there are a lot of variables that are out there right now. We kept in what we thought were necessities, like lawnmowers and things that, you know, Parks and Rec have to cut grass. The mini splits those are something for that soccer side that they've never had before. So now all of a sudden it's a necessity. That's why that was the justification for taking it out right now. As for the roof replacement, talking with Keith, we felt that we could hold off on that for a year.
Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Mrs. Ackerman?
Mr. Chairman, I know, I have a daughter in Florida, and I know that these lightning detection systems are, I mean, obviously Florida gets a lot more lightning than we do, but is that a safety issue? I mean, Mr. Borton, do you know how many other area rec centers have one?
Ms. Sacrament, I don't know exactly how many other rec centers have them. It's just something that I've been hearing more and more about, that they have the systems that I've looked at. And again, they are kind of pricey. Right now, if there's lightning detected by our supervisors, they call the games. This system sends an alert, it detects it as a siren, shut all the games out quickly from their app or from their phone or whatever that is. But we do have people out there, they are, part of their supervisor's job is watching for lightning and postponing the games and getting people off the fields when they see it. This is just an early warning system that gives us a heads up if we had that, but it's not necessarily a trend that all rec departments are using. It's just something I've looked into the last few years, and I think down the road will be beneficial, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ackerman. Council members, any further questions for tonight? I know we're 5 minutes past the start time for our regular council meeting. We can hold off our questions till next week if possible, and we can circle back to Mr. Reeves' questions with the administration if we want to go into that further. But I do want to, if we don't have any further questions on the budget stuff today, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Horniak so we can start our regular meeting of council.
Okay, do you need a motion to adjourn?
No, we do not.
All right, we will move right into tonight's meeting. We'll just wait for our computer system to catch up with us.